Korea has unveiled its first-ever blueprint for conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines, vowing to coordinate closely with the U.S. while adhering to international non-proliferation standards. Korean stocks rebounded to the 8,000-point range on Tuesday as investor sentiment improved on signs of progress in U.S.-Iran peace talks, despite the fresh American strikes on Iran. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says a deal to end the U.S.-Israel conflict with Iran may still take several days, as Washington confirmed strikes on Iranian missile sites and mine-laying vessels in southern Iran, while negotiations continued in Qatar. Korea has unveiled a much-anticipated plan to develop its own nuclear-powered submarines, as President Lee Jae-myung today held the first meeting of the Future Defense Strategy Committee. Our Oh Soo-young starts us off.
Korea has set out its first-ever plan to develop conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines, pledging close communication with the United States and strict compliance to non-proliferation rules. The Defense Ministry unveiled a roadmap Tuesday, naming it the Changbogo N project, a nod to Korea's first naval submarine, the ROKS Changbogo, with the N standing for Next Generation, Nuclear-Powered and New Advanced Technologies. This comes as North Korea continues to grow submarine-launched nuclear missile threats. Seoul's goal is to launch the first vessel in the mid-2030s, with deployment expected after the late 2030s. The submarine would use low-enriched uranium reactors designed for long-cycle operation to minimize fuel replacement. Development will be local, with Seoul seeking independent maintenance and sustainment capabilities. The program will manage the submarine's full life cycle, from design and construction to operation, fuel management and decommissioning. The ministry also laid out 3 non-proliferation commitments, stating Korea will neither possess nor develop nuclear weapons in any form. Seoul also pledged to coordinate closely with Washington on securing and managing low-enriched uranium while fulfilling its non-proliferation obligations. Korea will in fact establish a safeguard system with the International Atomic Energy Agency, especially for nuclear-powered submarines. The announcement follows moves by Seoul and Washington to implement security commitments agreed by Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump and outlined in a joint fact sheet last year, including U.S. cooperation on Korea's nuclear-powered submarines initiative and Seoul's push for civil uranium enrichment and spent fuel reprocessing rights.
The United States should view South Korea's request not primarily as a proliferation risk, but as an alliance adaptation issue. For the United States, supporting South Korea's nuclear-powered submarine ambition would strengthen allied undersea capacity at a time when China's neighbor expansion and North Korea's nuclear threat are both intensifying. A South Korean SSN capability could contribute to deterrence, sea lane security, anti-submarine warfare, and broader Indo-Pacific maritime stability.
In Washington, D.C. last week, First Vice Foreign Minister Park Yun-jo met with his counterpart, U.S. Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Alison Hooker, who will lead an interagency delegation to launch bilateral working groups in Seoul in the coming weeks. On Tuesday, President Lee said nuclear-powered submarines built on the foundation of a firm alliance with the U.S. symbolize Korea's determination to take responsibility for peace and security on the Korean peninsula. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
North Korea launched close-range ballistic missiles and artillery rockets toward the West Sea earlier this afternoon. Seoul's Joint Chief of Staff said Tuesday that the missiles were detected at around 1 p.m., originating from North Korea's Jeongju area in Pyeongbuk-do province, and flew some 80 kilometers. Intelligence officials here and their U.S. counterparts shared relevant information and tracked related movements from the early stages of the launch, while exchanging data with neighboring Japan as well. This latest launch marks North Korea's first ballistic missile provocation in 37 days and its 8th ballistic missile launch this year. The local stock market today reclaimed the 8,000-point level, fueled by strong chip shares and a global tech rally, as well as easing oil prices amid hopes for a Middle East peace deal. Park Jun-han reports.
Korea's benchmark KOSPI has reclaimed the 8,000 mark, closing at an all-time high of 8,047 points on Tuesday. The rally was largely driven by the return of foreign investors. Their purchases were heavily concentrated in the semiconductor sector. As a result, the nation's tech giants saw historic milestones, with Samsung Electronics crossing the 300,000 won mark at one point and SK hynix surpassing 2 million won. This surge reflects broader global momentum fueled by the artificial intelligence boom, which has led to high returns for investors worldwide. Another major factor lifting investor sentiment is the sharp drop in international oil prices. With growing expectations of a U.S.-Iran ceasefire agreement, U.S. crude futures plunged over 6% to around $90 a barrel, while Brent crude fell below $100 for the first time since late April. Because Korea relies heavily on energy imports, the stock market is particularly sensitive to these stabilizing oil prices. However, market analysts warn of potential short-term volatility.
Many investors remain concerned about whether semiconductor stocks can continue rising, given the sector's history of sharp earnings volatility. However, U.S. big tech companies driving demand for chips are still posting very strong earnings, which continue to support the market. Valuations are certainly stretched compared to past levels, so there might be some pressure. But for now, there do not appear to be many clear warning signs pointing to an immediate reversal.
Furthermore, despite hopes for peace, experts remain cautious due to high interest rates. As U.S. big tech firms have been issuing corporate bonds to finance massive data center investments, elevated borrowing costs could indirectly affect semiconductor companies' earnings as well. In particular, uncertainty surrounding the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy path, especially following the appointment of new Fed Chair Kevin Warsh, could weigh on market sentiment going forward. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says a deal with Iran could take a few more days, even as Washington carries out new strikes on Iran. Kim So-young reports.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has signaled that Washington still wants to keep diplomacy alive with Iran. Speaking during a diplomatic visit to India, Rubio said discussions are underway in Qatar and that reaching an agreement could take a couple of days.
I think there's strong alignment and agreement on what a preliminary draft should look like. It's going to take a couple days to settle on even down to the disagreements over a word, sentence. But this is, it's either going to be a good deal or there isn't going to be one.
This comes as the United States has carried out strikes in southern Iran. U.S. Central Command said the self-defense strikes were aimed at protecting American troops. Iran has not yet issued a response to the latest U.S. strikes. This came after President Trump once again underscored his administration's position on Iran: no nuclear weapons. He said 13 U.S. service members had lost their lives to make sure Iran would never be able to have a nuclear weapon.
In Operation Epic Fury, we lost 13 wonderful souls. These incredible men and women gave their lives to ensure that the world's #1 state sponsor of terror will never have a nuclear weapon. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
Writing on social media, he warned that if talks collapse, attacks could resume bigger and stronger than ever before. The hardline message comes as Trump faces criticism even from within his own party, where some lawmakers have warned against a weak deal. At a briefing on Monday local time, the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson also confirmed that the two sides had reached agreements.
It is true that we have reached a conclusion regarding a large part of the topics under discussion, but to say that this means the signing of an agreement is imminent, no one can make such a claim.
Against this backdrop, Trump is expected to push for stronger denuclearization commitment in an MOU with Iran, while also urging Arab countries to join the Abraham Accords, the normalization agreement with Israel. Kim Seo-young, Arirang News.
President Lee Jae-myung has urged for an active fiscal policy for the latter half of 2026 to prepare for changes after the war ends in the Middle East and recap greater potential growth. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min has this report.
Deploying economic measures is necessary to preemptively address developments that will unfold after the war ends in the Middle East. This was according to President Lee Jae-myung at Tuesday's cabinet meeting, which also serves as an emergency economic meeting, as the South Korean government draws up its economic strategy for the second half of 2026.
올해가 잠재 성장률 반등의 원년이 되도록 재정의 적극적 역할을 바탕으로 치밀하고 속도감 있는 정책 대응을 당부드립니다.
He also called for tightening belts to conserve funds so they can be used in areas deemed essential.
불효불급한 재정 지출은 과감하게 줄여야 합니다. 국민이 맡긴 세금과 권력을 오로지 국민만을 위해서 제대로 잘 사용하는 것이 바로 우리의 책임입니다.
Officials noted that the country's nominal growth rate is expected to reach nearly 10% this year, as they say the local economy grew and recovered fast despite the prolonged Middle East conflict.
As growth improves, tax revenue will increase, and these are likely to push up prices and interest rates. We will try to minimize those concerns as we devise a growth strategy plan fit for the new era.
On top of imminent tasks to tamp down higher prices, the authorities plan to embark on structural reform in the public, financial, and labor sectors.
지속적으로 우상향할 수 있게 하는 게 정말로 중요한 것 같아요. 그러려면 우리 사회의 모든 분야를 다 바꿔야 됩니다.
Officials call the timing a golden hour for an economic rebound. It also coincides with the start of President Lee's second year in office, after taking the oath of office last June. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
With just over a week remaining until Korea's local elections, the race for a Busan mayor is drawing growing national attention as candidates offer competing visions for the country's second largest city. Our Moon Hae-ryul went there to file this report.
Busan is shaping up to be one of the defining battlegrounds of Korea's June 3rd local elections, with both major party candidates making their case to voters as the race heats up. On Tuesday, Democratic Party candidate Chun Jae-soo, who served as the inaugural Minister of Oceans and Fisheries under President Lee Jae-myung, attended an international cooperation signing ceremony at Busan National University's Hydrogen Ship Technology Center, an event that speaks directly to his campaign pledge of making Busan a global maritime capital.
This project will not only make Busan the center of international standards for liquid hydrogen, it will generate around 3 trillion won in production value, 1.8 trillion won in added value, and create over 11,000 jobs.
People Power Party candidate and incumbent Mayor Park Hyung-jun, meanwhile, spent his afternoon meeting older adults at a community welfare center, where he laid out his welfare vision, pledging to expand AI and digital technology across the city's welfare centers and senior community spaces.
Busan has a large aging population, which makes welfare policy critically important. That's why we're upgrading our welfare centers with the latest digital technology and AI to better care for our older adults.
The two candidates are painting very different pictures of Busan's future. Chun looking forward, pitching the city as a global maritime and technological hub, while Park is focusing closer to home, addressing the everyday concerns of an aging city through welfare and community.
With 8 days left until polling day, both candidates are going all out to win over voters in what has tightened into one of the most competitive mayoral races of this election cycle. 문혜련, Arirang News, Busan.
In Busan is also taking place the parliamentary by-elections, where a three-way competition is intensifying as political battles deepen among the candidates. Our correspondent An Sung-jin reports this from the ground.
Alongside the upcoming local elections, the June 3rd vote also features high-stakes parliamentary by-elections, with 14 National Assembly seats up for grabs.
One of the most fierce battlegrounds in parliamentary by-elections is here in Busan buk-gap district, a tight race between three candidates.
The ruling Democratic Party has fielded Ha Jong-woo, a former senior secretary to the president, on AI. Ha is anchoring his campaign on transforming the district into the nation's premier AI education and economic hub, with Busan's first AI specialized high school and an AI tech valley to boost local education, childcare, and the economy simultaneously. Meanwhile, the main opposition People Power Party has looked to former Veterans Minister Park Min-sik. Park is vowing to tackle long-standing local bottlenecks in transportation and urban renewal through an infrastructure overhaul, presenting a nearly 9-kilometer stretch of the Gyeongbu railway line that currently cuts right through the district.
I don't let myself get swayed by fluctuating poll numbers. Instead, I place my trust entirely in the true sentiment and the heart of the residents here in the district.
Adding to the heavy-hitting lineup is former PPP floor leader Han Dong-hoon, who is running with a bold regional development blueprint. Han's platform centers on building a K-complex arena and transforming the Nakdong River area into a vibrant Nakdong Golden Belt that blends live entertainment, tourism, and local commerce.
I look to bring the kind of development this district missed out on for far too long. Whether I'm running as an independent or with a party, voters recognize that I can truly deliver their promises.
As the race enters its final stretch, with three heavyweight candidates offering vastly different visions for the region's future, it is now up to the voters to decide which blueprint will shape the future of their city. An Sung-jin, Arirang News, Busan.
Russia has threatened to launch a series of large-scale strikes on Ukraine, framing the move as a response to attacks on civilians. Cha Yoon-kyung reports.
Russia warned on Monday local time that it will carry out deadly large-scale airstrikes against Ukraine, days after attacks on the Ukrainian capital. Russia's foreign ministry said in a statement that decision-making centers, command posts, and drone manufacturing facilities will be the target of the new strikes in response to the Ukrainian attack on Friday local time. According to Ukrainian authorities, Russia carried out strikes on Saturday night, killing 4 and injuring more than 90 people in Kyiv. Moscow has called for foreign nationals and diplomats to leave Kyiv as soon as possible. During a phone call on Monday local time, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov urged U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to evacuate U.S. staff from its embassy in Kyiv. Russia has been in retaliation after accusing Ukraine of carrying out a deadly attack on a student dormitory in an occupied part of eastern Ukraine on Friday. According to Russian authorities, at least 16 people were killed and 42 were injured in the town of Starobilsk in the Luhansk region. In return, Ukraine's defense forces struck oil refineries in Russia's Bryansk region in return on Monday night. Ukraine has constantly targeted oil depots in Russia by using drones, causing operations to stop at facilities that account for roughly 25% of domestic gasoline production. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
The scale and speed of the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo are sounding alarm bells across health organizations worldwide. Ian-jin has the details.
World Health Organization Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus has said that the pace Ebola is spreading is outpacing containment efforts. According to authorities from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, cumulative confirmed cases have risen to 101, and the cumulative suspected cases to 930. Suspected Ebola deaths have been tallied at 221. Centered in the Ituri province in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, Ebola has spread to 11 areas, including North and South Kivu provinces. Neighboring Uganda reported 2 new cases on Monday, both health workers, bringing its total confirmed cases to 7. Dr. Ghebreyesus also said on Monday during a virtual ministerial briefing that responders are playing catch-up after a weeks-long detection delay and warned the outbreak is likely to get worse before it gets better. He plans to travel to the epicenter of the virus in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Tuesday. Declared a public health emergency of international concern by the WHO, this is Congo's 17th Ebola outbreak. However, the specific Budibugyo species of Ebola that is spreading is rare, with no vaccines or medications, making it harder to treat. The WHO said last week it could take up to 9 months for a vaccine. Amid efforts to isolate patients and trace transmission routes, local police in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo on Sunday had to fire shots in the air after angry crowds demanded they reclaim the bodies of loved ones who died from the virus. Meanwhile, the WHO and the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention have unveiled a 6-month Ebola response plan. With a $319 million budget, the plan covers all 55 African Union member states. $265 million is allocated for outbreak response in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda, while $54 million will go towards preparedness efforts in 10 high-risk African countries. 이은진, Arirang News.
BTS took home the top honor of the Artist of the Year at the American Music Awards in Las Vegas on Monday, earning a second victory in the ceremony's flagship category. Park Kwon-woo has more.
Members looked stunned while some hugged each other with joy. The reactions came as BTS was announced the winner of the top honor, Artist of the Year, at the 2026 American Music Awards held in Las Vegas on Monday local time. It marked the group's second win in the category following its historic victory in 2021, when BTS became the first Asian act to receive the award, before members began their mandatory military service.
Thank you. It's an honor to have this precious award once again after everybody done their military service. Like the legendary Busta Rhymes said, it's a fan-voted award, so our biggest thanks and gratitude, as always, goes to the armies all over the world.
The group beat out 9 other nominees, including Bad Bunny and Taylor Swift, to claim the award. BTS at the AMAs also picked up 2 additional trophies: Song of the Summer for Swim, the lead track from its latest album Arirang, and Best Male K-pop Artist, sweeping all 3 categories in which the group was nominated. While AMA is considered one of the 3 major US music awards alongside the Grammys and Billboard Music Awards, the AMAs are widely seen as a stronger reflection of public popularity, as winners are determined through fan votes after nominees are selected over factors including streaming numbers and album sales. With BTS sweeping awards at the AMAs just 2 months after the album's release, attention is also drawn to whether BTS will be able to win a trophy at the upcoming Grammys next February. BTS hasn't won a Grammy so far. Also at the ceremony, K-Pop Demon Hunters took home 4 trophies, including Song of the Year for Golden from its soundtrack and Best Soundtrack. Singer-songwriter EJ thanked fans for helping the song in the film gain tremendous support. In addition, Korea-US collaborative K-pop group KATSEYE also emerged as another standout winner, earning 3 awards, including New Artist of the Year. The members also expressed gratitude toward BTS for helping expand global interest in their genre. KATSEYE also performed its latest track release, Pinky Up. With multiple K-pop acts taking home major honors at this year's AMAs, expectations are growing for the genre to further expand its global dominance. Park Kwon-woo, Arirang News.
The
The wet weather will continue into tomorrow morning across the central regions, while the southern regions and Jeju Island could see rain lingering into tomorrow afternoon. A heavy rain warning remains in effect for the mountainous areas of Jeju Island, where more than 250 millimeters is expected through tomorrow. The south coast could receive over 150, while parts of the central regions may pick up as much as 60 millimeters. Strong winds will accompany the rain as well. Mountainous areas of Jeju Island, currently under a strong wind advisory, could see wind gusts exceeding 25 meters per second through early tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's Seoul will start the day at 21 degrees, Chuncheon at 18 degrees, Daegu at 19 degrees. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 25 degrees, Daegu at 22 degrees, Gwangju at 28 degrees. After the rain moves out, skies will gradually clear and temperatures will start to rise again. However, with big day-to-night temperature swings of around 15 degrees, be sure to dress in layers.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.
가벼운 말이 가득한 곳 난 아무렇지 않게 원하는 꿈을 꿔 파도를 벗어난 사진들이 찾아왔어 아주 짙고 복잡한 낱말들이 내 곁을 스쳐가네
from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang. Knock knock! The magical door to the world of K-animation is swinging wide open. Meet your instant new BFF, the adorable Catch. Tina Ping will have you hooked from the very first glance. Need a hand? Our Robocar Poli Rescue team is always zooming in to save the day. How about tagging along on Pinkfong and Pal's super exciting quest to reclaim their lost magic? With the mysterious life forms Kabion by your side, you can become a Kabion master and save humanity like the total hero. Protecting children's innocence while igniting their boundless imaginations. That's the magic of Korean animation. K-animation, the ultimate bestie for kids worldwide.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said Tuesday that reaching a deal with Iran could still take several days, and dampening expectations for a swift breakthrough just a day after Washington carried out what it called defensive strikes in southern Iran. For more on this tonight, we connect with Professor Robert Lawrence. Welcome, Professor Lawrence.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Also joining us virtually is Dr. Young-Ship Bong. Good evening, Dr. Bong.
Good evening.
Dr. Bong, the U.S. military carried out what it described as defensive self-defense strikes against targets in Iran. Now, what do you think was the intention behind carrying out the strikes at this particular moment and publicly disclosing them?
If I may assess the impact of the recent military engagement between the countries, I don't think it's going to be any significant impact enough to derail the ongoing diplomatic negotiations by both sides, because the United States described the launch as an act of self-defense strike on Iran, and the response by the United States military has been really restrained. The purpose described by the U.S. military spokesperson was to protect U.S. troops from threats posed by Iranian forces, but at the same time, although the U.S. military will be continue to defend the forces while using restraint during the ongoing ceasefire. So it reiterated a big commitment by the U.S. government on the ongoing ceasefire negotiations with Iran. From the side of Iran, that Iranian military has not done anything that would have led to dangerous escalation of tension after this engagement. So the U.S. launching self-defense strikes near the Strait of Hormuz must have been one of the tactical attempts by the U.S. military to maintain its closure of the strait, but the purpose was not anything so big or fatal.
Well, Iran is yet to issue an official statement on the American strikes. Now, in the meantime, Professor Lawrence, what does that tell us about where those negotiations actually stand at the moment? Because according to Rubio, it's going to take at least several days.
Well, like Professor Bong said, the U.S. is claiming that this is a defensive strike, and the strikes appear to be fairly limited. There doesn't appear to be any intention to escalate, which implies that both sides want to continue with the negotiations. So I agree with Professor Bong. I don't think that these are going to actually impede negotiations. To be clear, the negotiations are fragile. And both sides are sending publicly, conflicting messages. We keep hearing that 95% of the negotiations have been kind of agreed upon.
and that there's only 5% left, but there are a lot of very crucial sticking points in that 5%. Just to name a few, Iran has maintained that it's not going to give up control of the strait and that the U.S. needs to stop its blockade. The U.S. maintains that it needs to be reopened to pre-February 28th traffic and no fees are acceptable. Highly enriched uranium. The U.S. says that Iran has to either give it up or destroy it under the supervision of an international watchdog. And Iran is saying that it hasn't agreed to even give it up yet, but there are some discussions of a third-party option. Iran's demanding that about $25 billion of frozen assets are unfrozen, and sanction relief comes up front, and the U.S. is saying that this can only happen upon compliance with its demands. The U.S. wants Iran to dismantle its centrifuges and commit to not having a nuclear weapon, and Iran is saying that it hasn't committed to any of those. And of course, there are other big issues on the table. Is Lebanon included in the deal? Iran's missile program and regional proxies. So, these have been front and center since the beginning of Epic Fury. Now, neither side wants to appear so desperate to make a deal that they lose leverage. But, while there does seem to be a little bit of movement compared to the stalemate before, the massive deficit in trust and how divergent each side sees these core issues mean that I think we probably need to temper our expectations.
Well, I do have to say a lot has happened over the long weekend. On Memorial Day, Trump once again declared that, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Now, again, Dr. Bong, the nuclear issue is being framed as a prerequisite for a sanctions relief, right?
Yes and no, because on the onset of the ceasefire agreement, after President Trump threatened to destroy all the civilian infrastructure, power plants and bridges inside Iran and turn Iran to the Stone Age. The Trump administration initially insisted upon the original demand for the complete destruction and disablement of all the nuclear programs and facilities inside Iran, in addition to Iran handing over the highly enriched uranium, about 400 kilograms, 60% enriched. But there has been a slight change in tone and wording of the same demands with regard to Iran's nuclear programs and capability. For instance, President Trump posted on the social media that he would prefer those enriched uranium materials would be destroyed inside Iran under professional international watchdog. I think that's a very significant change of his hardline position with regard to U.S. demand on the future of the Iran's nuclear programs. And Iranian side also has been by and large quite muted in terms of criticizing whatever statements regarding Iran's nuclear program and materials issued by the U.S. government, including the internet posting by the President of the United States. So although these are very minute and subtle changes, they are significant in terms of us being able to detect ongoing commitment by both sides to keep alive the ceasefire negotiation, at least for a significant amount of time, like 30 days or 60 days, to give each other, opportunity to, lead the situation to actual end of the military conflict by both sides.
Well, at the same time, the U.S. midterm elections are approaching in November. Professor Lawrence, Trump is also facing his own concerns from his own supporters over the possibility of a so-called, weak deal with Iran. To avoid such criticism that the agreement lacks substance, what do you think are the minimum conditions that must be included in any final Iran deal?
Right. There are a significant amount of misinformation and disinformation, emanated from multiple sides in this conflict. There's the international battle for the information space between the U.S. and Iran, and this kind of provokes domestic battles for information space between Democrats and Republicans, but also inside rival factions in the Republican Party right now. There's a lot of political pressure right now. Gas prices are high, and as of last weekend, the Memorial Day weekend usually kicks off the summer. We have the World Cup coming to America this summer. There's the 250th anniversary for U.S. independence, and of course the midterms in November, like you said. So a lot of people in the MAGA movement feel betrayed by Trump ever getting involved in Iran. And for them, the sooner it's over, the better. But, the Iran hawks, those like Senator Graham, Senator Cruz, National Security Advisor, former National Security Advisor Bolton, and former Secretary of State Pompeo, they've warned pretty explicitly to not be too eager to make a deal that might, lead the administration to be too conciliatory in their negotiations. For his part, he said that he's not going to make a bad deal. It won't be like the JCPOA, and the people don't know what he's actually doing. So it's tough to see how much this criticism is affecting his position. And it'll be impossible to please everybody. But for those who agree with attacking Iran, those hawks, they're going to want a dismantled nuclear system with robust oversight. They're going to want no Iranian possession of highly enriched uranium, the Strait to be back to pre-February 28th condition, and they want to disable Iran's capacity to project power outside of its own borders, along with some guarantees on the proxies. So it's a tall order.
I agree. Well, what's particularly striking is that Trump has brought up the Abraham Accords, Dr. Bong, while warning that military action against Iran could intensify if the talks collapse. The question is, do remind us what the Abraham Accords are, and why do you think he's suddenly linking them to the negotiations with Iran?
When you are desperate to defend your position, then one of the best solutions would be cover it up, cover the problem with something even bigger. The 2022 Abraham Accord has been hailed by the supporters of the Trump administration since the first term as one of the major diplomatic achievements by the President of the United States, bringing eternal peace on the Middle East by forging diplomatic normalization between former adversaries, between Israel and Arab countries, including Bahrain and UAE. Only two Middle Eastern countries recognizes Israel as a sovereign state and agreed upon diplomatic normalization before this 2022 agreement, which were Jordan and Egypt. So the Abraham Accord was hailed as a diplomatic breakthrough for enlarged circle of peace that covers Israel and the Middle Eastern countries. And other countries also demonstrate their intentions to join the accord, such as Sudan, Kazakhstan, and Somalia. And Morocco also joined the accord. So the crown jewel of the future success of this accord, Abraham Accord, is Saudi Arabia joining the accord. But because of the accusation of massacre conducted by the armed forces of Israel, for the Palestinian residents in the Gaza Strip, these Arab countries have demonstrated their reluctance to speed up their process to possibly join the accord. So as I said, that it is almost impossible for President Trump to please and satisfy his supporters and critics alike that it was the correct decision by him to initiate this military operation to get rid of the nuclear capability and materials of Iran. Knowing this, then he has to come up with something big enough to divert the focus of public criticism and attention on Iran war. So expansion of the Abraham Accord might be one of his solutions.
Well, let's see how that strategic move actually works this time. Sorry to cut you off.
Right. I'd like to comment on the Professor Lawrence's remark that yes, it is almost impossible for the President Trump to justify his decision to go to war in Iraq because Iran war has been taking a very similar trajectory as one of the so-called forever wars that the MAGA supporters severely criticize big mistakes and decided by the U.S. president, which undercuts the long-term stability and the growth of the United States, especially its strategic competition with China. So I think it is politically prudent for the Republican Party and President Trump himself to cut off the deal now than later, because the midterm election is not next month, but it is in mid-November, first week of November. So if you succeed in making a ceasefire agreement with Iran, your party still has reasonable amount of time to make a late comeback to defend itself in the highly contested election in early November. But if you drag on this ceasefire agreement too long with Iran, then you will not have enough amount of time to overcome the odds to actually do very well in the midterm election in November.
Well, he has about 3 months, I believe, to take care of that business. Now, at the same time, Trump appears to open to allowing Iran to destroy its enriched uranium domestically rather than, sending it abroad. Professor Lawrence, where is this flexibility coming from?
He seems to prefer to have it destroyed in Iran with conjunction with Iran and the Atomic Energy Commission or some international equivalent. From his perspective, I think he's probably trying to signal a movement away from maximalist posturing. It's a form of compromise. This is sort of a pattern with him. He starts from a maximalist position, but he would actually be fine accepting a result of lesser value. However, I'm not sure that everyone in Iran will see it this way. Some might see this as a concession that they can take care of in-house that is difficult to defend in an international court of opinion and that they can use as leverage in negotiations. However, your more hardliners, they may see this as giving up on material that the U.S. was not able to take from them in the 6-week aerial campaign. This could provide material for the ultimate deterrent in time if they're patient, and it's therefore nonsensical to give it up willingly. So Trump is trying to show flexibility to try to get a deal to the finish line. And I think he loses very little if he can ultimately guarantee that it's still destroyed, whether it's destroyed in Iran or in the U.S.
Then, Dr. Bong, let's say Washington ultimately accepts either the destruction of enriched uranium inside Iran or its disposal in a third country. How significant of a concession would that represent on the American side?
Well, it's up to how Trump administration is going to present the achievement. It's a matter of how the result will be framed as a huge success by the Trump administration. And the measuring stick is a 2015 JCPOA forged by Barack Obama administration that the Trump administration and President Trump even before inauguration of his first term, severely criticized as one of the biggest mistakes in the diplomatic history of the United States. So any agreement with Iran with regard to Iran's nuclear capability has to be seen topping the better than the 2015 JCPOA. According to the JCPOA, Iran side agreed to maintain 3.67% for the highly enriched uranium. So any agreement possibly forged between Tehran and Washington this time should be lower than the mark of 3.67%. And about 97 to 98% of all the enriched uranium was taken out of territory of Iran, according to the 2015 agreement. Something that are really tangible in the suspicious eyes of the domestic constituents inside the United States that this time the agreed result with regard to Iran's nuclear capability is at least as good as a 2015 agreement.
Well, Dr. Bong just gave us a pretty solid response, but I still do want to ask Professor Lawrence, if Iran's enriched uranium is transferred to a third country, the obvious question is, where would it go? Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has floated Russia as one option, but realistically, which countries are being considered?
Mojtaba Khamenei said, just the other day that he was insistent that uranium was going to stay in Iran. So I think there's a domestic debate about this that's still may get in the way. But assuming that it does happen, in the JCPOA in 2015, what Dr. Bong was just referring to, Iran handed over approximately 11 tons of low-enriched uranium to Russia. Russia's also offered to take it this time, so that's a possibility. But President Trump may be very reluctant to commit to anything that heavily resembles the JCPOA. He was so adamant in criticizing this for years, and he eventually tore it up. And even just in the last 48 hours, he sent out multiple different posts or texts saying that this will be the opposite of the JCPOA. It will not be like the JCPOA. So he may be reluctant to make it happen, go to Russia. Now, we're seeing reports that China may be a destination, and that might be a face-saving option. But there's a question of neutrality with both of these options. From a U.S. point of view, Russia and China weren't neutral actors in the conflict. Rather, they intervened on behalf of Iran and dual-use technology and providing intelligence and bankrolling the IRGC through oil sales. So I would think it'd be preferable to either destroy it in Iran or to have it transferred to the U.S. But it's tough to know what on what issues these two sides are going to be willing to budge and what they're going to take hard lines on in this negotiation.
Well, now that you mentioned China, Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has visited China and met with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, following meetings with the U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, what message do you think Xi is trying to send through this latest round of high-level diplomacy? Dr. Bong.
Well, China has become a so-called better substitute for the United States as a credible superpower in the midst of the ongoing war in Iran. And China has been using its economic, security, and diplomatic influence to exercise its impact on global affairs, which has not been only limited to the war in Iran, but Russia's position in the war with Ukraine, as well as the nuclear issues on the Korean Peninsula. And President Xi Jinping of China made it clear that if mishandled, then Taiwan issue will be the ticking bomb that may derail the security cooperation between the two superpowers, Beijing and Washington. So we are waiting for the Trump administration to devise its response to this warning issued by President Xi Jinping at the summit meeting in Beijing. And it is up to China whether it is going to play any constructive mediator to lead acceptable ceasefire agreement between the United States, Israel on one hand, and Iran on the other hand. Because the reason why Iran is so obsessed with the control of the Strait of Hormuz is that Iranian leadership and military have recognized that control of the Strait of Hormuz was far more impactful than use of nuclear weapons to compel U.S. changes strategic posture and military invasion of Iran. So China needs to make a great deal of influence upon Iran in order to persuade Iran to release its control of the strait in exchange for something comparable agreed upon by the United States.
I see. We'll have to leave it there for tonight. Dr. Bong, thank you for your time tonight. And also, Professor Lawrence, thank you for your insight as always. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
We also thank you for staying with us tonight. This has been Kim Dami. Good night.